Pursuant to Section 84-1411 of Nebraska statutes, notice of this meeting was given on September 4, 2020. This meeting will convene at 6:30 p.m. If you would like a request to be heard form, you can go out in the hallway and fill one of these forms out. You have up until the first 5 minutes of the board meeting, until 6:35 to fill these out. In order to be heard at the meeting, the agenda items are subject to be reordered at the discretion of the board president. Please attend the entire meeting to ensure you're able to hear any discussion. Thank you. Pursuant to Section 84-1411 of Nebraska statutes, the next regular meeting of the Board of Education of Douglas County School District 0001 and the Board of Educational Service Unit number 19 will be held on Monday, September 21st, 2020, at 6:30 p.m. in the board meeting room of the Teacher Administrative Center, 3215 Cummings Street. The agenda will be kept current and available for public inspection in the office of the Secretary of the Board of Education at the Administrative Building during regular working hours. Pursuant to Section 841412 of the Nebraska statutes, the public is hereby informed that a current copy of the Nebraska Open Meetings Act is posted in the board meeting room on the north wall. Please stand and join us for the Pledge of Allegiance. Thank you, Dr. Holman. Dr. Holman will lead us in the OPS vision and mission statement.
Our vision, every student, every day, prepare for success. And our mission, Omaha Public Schools prepares all students to excel in college, career, and life.
Thank you. Mr. Ray, roll call, please.
Cassidy,
Here.
Godding,
Present.
Allman,
Here.
Cracky,
Here.
Perlman,
Here.
Ryan,
Present.
Smith,
Here.
Snipe, Snow.
Here.
8 present.
Thank you. Moving on to board and superintendent communications. We'll start with our treasurer's report, Mr. Roberts.
President Snow, Vice President Holman, members of the board, Superintendent Logan. The financial statements for the period ended July 31st, 2020 have been finalized and submitted for your review.
Thank you, Mr. Roberts. If anyone has any questions for Mr. Roberts or his team, please reach out to Dr. Logan, Mr. Ray, or his department. Moving on to the next item we have for communications, Dr. Logan.
Good evening, President Snow, members of the Board of Education, those in attendance here, and those watching this stream. I'd like to begin this evening's remarks by restating for the public our school district's continued commitment to financial accountability, which is one of our 4 strategic plan of action priorities. As a school district responsible for the stewardship of the taxpayers' resources we receive to serve our students and families, we recognize the needs to be accountable for our funding. This past January, when we unveiled our strategic plan of action, we shared our intent to create a budget that indicated a clear connection to student outcomes, aligning public funds and private partnerships with our strategic initiatives. Tonight's walkthrough of our proposed budget for the 2020-2021 school year reflects a balanced approach and plan for responsible use of our available financial resources. We outlined our intended investment in academic programs, student, staff, technology, and the upkeep of our facilities. We've already seen some of our investments in technology as part of our 100% virtual learning model, with each student receiving an internet-enabled iPad Air device. We've delivered more than 45,000 of these devices to date, with the remainder to be distributed very soon. These investments are more important today than ever before as we continue to deliver curriculum to our students in the midst of a global pandemic. Throughout the past 5 years, our student enrollment increased by nearly 4%, and we anticipate continued enrollment increases over the next 5 years. Nearly 76% of our general fund budget is designated for instructional support services. This includes regular instruction, special education, student support, instructional support, and school administration. Our average education cost per pupil continues to track below the statewide average. Thank you to our Chief Financial Officer, Scott Roberts, and his team for the work to brief our Board of Education and stakeholders this evening. During Tuesday night's special board meeting, we provided our community with an update on the metrics we are currently monitoring to make a decision about the appropriate timing for bringing our students back to in-person learning. We acknowledge the challenges and the frustrations of our families have faced during remote learning and the desire to restart extracurricular activities. As we look forward to a possible return to in-person learning, our priority will continue to be health and safety. Those include layers of precautions to prevent the spread of COVID-19. We know some communities in our city are well above the 5% positivity threshold public health experts want us to achieve, with rates as high as 20% in some above in some zip codes. With the help of our community, with actions like consistently wearing face coverings, avoiding crowds, and social distancing, we are hoping to see positivity rates decline between now and the start of second quarter. We shared our non-negotiable guidelines for returning to in-person learning. We must be able to deliver 5 days of instruction, either synchronously or asynchronously. We must be able to deliver 5 days of in-person instruction for students who receive ACP supports or attend JP Lord School. We must be able to adhere to layered health and safety precautions, including facial coverings and social distancing, and in schools where additional precautions are needed, to have those precautions in place. We must maintain remote learning options that keep already established student-teacher connections intact. We've identified metrics and planned with the help of our public health officials and area medical professionals. Our team stands ready. Our student transportation partner is positioned to move forward with 2 weeks' notice. We've made adjustments to our school's air handling systems, which will circulate fresh air throughout our facilities more frequently throughout the day. We've practiced enhanced cleaning and disinfecting procedures. We will continue those as staff work inside our schools each day and when our students return. We're pursuing partnerships that ensure access to testing for members of our district community so we can responsibly learn in person. Toward the end of our update, we shared our draft 5-phased approach to proceed with our Family 3-2 model. In the first and second phases, our special education students will return to school 5 days a week. In the third, fourth, and fifth phases, our elementary, middle, and high school students would return to class under the Family 3-2 model. We know that with community spread, cases will be identified in our schools. We know there will be times where we need to transition a particular school to another model, back to remote, for example, for a specific time to combat the risk of wider spread. No one is more eager for our students to return to in-person learning than we are. We also understand and take our responsibility seriously. We must be ready to make swift decisions for the health and safety of our staff, students, and families. We continue to look at case trends, positivity rates, and guidance from our community partners and health experts as we make a decision about the possibility of returning to in-person learning, which we plan to release next week. Before we move on, however, I do have some congratulations that I need to extend. National Merit semifinalists from Omaha Public Schools, from North High, Jackson Long, from Central High, Carolyn Dillman, Edward Easton, Emily Engel, Anna Festerson, Killian Green, and Mila Hirschbaum Harding, and from Burke High, Nicholas Hammonds, Laura Kirschenbaum, and Natalia Trejo Andalon. This concludes my remarks for this evening. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Logan. Moving on to board members. Mrs. Cracky.
It doesn't seem like much, but you know, we aren't communicating with people. We're sitting on the board and we do talk to you when you talk to us, et cetera. But for us to get out in public and go to the schools or see people, we can't do that. Nobody's there, and it's kind of really sad because I like doing these things. So I had a surprise this week when Crestridge sent me their envelope of the newsletter, and it was in color. And it just made me feel so good. It was just a real warm feeling, and I really appreciated that. So that's how it appears to us on the other side. That's all.
Thank you, Mrs. Cracky. Mrs. Gotting.
Well, a couple of items. First, I also want to offer my congratulations to the National Merit Scholars. That's 9 from our district. That may be some of the most we've ever had, I think. So I'm pretty excited that we had 3 different schools who were well represented in achieving that honor. It's a very challenging honor to test that well on your PSAT and get there. So I am really proud of them, and I know that we all offer our congratulations to the students from North, Burke, and Central. The next item I would like to bring to everyone's attention, and it was on the agenda for tonight, but there was a little bit of a error in the information, so it's no longer on the agenda, was a grant. But since the person who worked so hard to get so much of this work done is here tonight, I want to recognize her, and that's Lisa Carlson. So Lisa, would you please stand? Lisa has done a significant amount of work raising funds to help with the Burke High School stadium renovation. And so if you're at all affiliated with Burke, you've been hearing from her, and all of the alumni should have heard by now as well. So I just want to thank her for all of her work. Also, the Sherwood Foundation, I think probably 3 years ago or 4 years ago, gave us about $1 million, and that started the work rolling, and I believe we are really, really close to seeing everything come to fruition, and that stadium will be renovated, which is wonderful because it's the largest stadium in the state, and where we get to host the NSAA track meet. And these renovations will ensure that we'll be able to keep the track meet here in Omaha and keep all the Class A schools I know in Omaha so that they can sleep in their beds at night before they go out and run those races and won't have to travel as much. So that are here in town. So we're very, very thankful for that. I'm very appreciative of all the work that Lisa's done and all the work that the entire team that was put together for that fundraising did as well. So I just want to acknowledge them for reaching that milestone, and it was going to be on the agenda, but now it's off. So it'll show up next time. So I agree. So I think that's it. That's all I have. Thank you.
Ms. Ryan.
My comment is a completely different tone than both Mrs. Cracky and Mrs. Godin, so just preparing y'all. I have a very complicated relationship with my time here on this board. If any of you know me, you know that I decided not to seek re-election very early on in this career. With having 7 board meetings left on my term, I've been very reflective about what this board and this district has accomplished in the past 4 years. And ultimately, I found that the last 6 months of my term are the most important. The conversation around OPS and COVID response has been draining. I don't know about the rest of my colleagues, but I don't think I've gotten a full night's sleep in months. But the past couple of weeks have been ultimately the worst. On Tuesday, I just decided to sit back and listen. I fully believe that we need to listen more than we speak, and to speak when it is needed. I also tell a lot of jokes, but none of what I'm about to say right now is a joke. This is what I have learned in the past couple of weeks. It has been reinforced to me that Nebraskans love their sports. It's not my cup of tea, but okay. The people of Omaha love their kids playing sports, and kids love to play sports. We all know this. But what I have also seen is that some families are more concerned with their own child's athletic success than that of the lives of our community as a whole. Some families will straight up say that. They want their kids to play sports so they can get scholarships. Thank you for that honesty, truly. But what is actually more dangerous, in my opinion, are the adults that are co-opting language around diversity, equity, and inclusion, the haves and the have-nots, to try to convince some of us board members that we are ruining the lives of our poor students and our students of color. This is wrong. Between emails with racially coded language and personal motive questioning, we have been sent articles about how good our student athletes are at South. Trust me, we all know this. We all are extremely proud of our student athletes. I, as do some of my other colleagues, know that sports, music, art, debate, etc. are life-changing activities for some of our students, especially our marginalized students. I was that student who relied on band and music and art to get me through high school. I get it. These points are valid. However, are you using the struggle of these Black, brown, and low-income students to get what you want, or because you do truly care about their success? If you are questioning whether you should leave the district because we aren't allowing sports for your child, yet send us an email about South High School, then you are co-opting the real struggle that these students actually have to deal with for your own personal gain. This type of political manipulation is not lost on me or other members of this board, especially those of us that grew up poor or are people of color ourselves. To the students that are in the middle of these conversations, I am so sorry. I truly am so sorry. And just know that we are not trying to punish you guys at all. But the reason that we have to have this is because of the lack of action from government officials in this nation, this state, and this county, excuse me while I finish my comment, had, and that this district has to stand up for our entire community. I wanted to make that statement first because that is directly about the children of this city. However, on a more personal note, and a note that I want all voters, candidates, and potential candidates to hear. Throughout my time on the board, myself and other board members, past and present, that do not have children or do not own a home have been ridiculed and told that we don't actually care about students because we don't have kids of our own or because we do not own a home. Let's just set the record straight on this real quick, okay? Number one, having a child is not a requirement to be an elected community representative. And number two, if you are renting an apartment or a home, the cost of property taxes are put into your rent. So we are paying property taxes. We're paying somebody else's property taxes. Further, did you know that about 1 in 8 US couples experience infertility? Does that mean that a person that cannot physically reproduce should not care about children? That they shouldn't dedicate their lives to serving children and making the community better? Did you know that to adopt a child in Nebraska, that upon jumping through all of the bureaucratic hoops that it takes and the waiting period to actually adopt the child and paying around $4,000 to have a home visit to make sure you're suitable to raise a child, that you also have to give about 15% of your gross yearly income, and that income is capped at $200,000, so people are aware, upon the first visit post-placement of that child to the agency, okay? So you're paying that on top of having to actually care for the child that you so desperately want. And if you have experienced infertility and gone through the cost to pay for treatment, and then you still just desperately want a child, and so you try to adopt, that system is messed up. And that leaves a lot of kids without families that could have had families. And then there's the topic of same-sex couples and single people who want to have a family. But because whether it's legal to have, for a same-sex couple to have a child, which it is in the state of Nebraska, people still get turned down because of discrimination. Still get turned down. And then there are others that, like me, don't have a child. And part of the reason why I don't have a child is because of the person that I was with, that I saw myself creating a life with, died. He died in the middle of giving a presentation for his final master's class. So, that is why I don't have a child. But I care so deeply for these children. So, Miss Gotti, when you said, maybe I'm the only one that cares about this topic because I have 3 student athletes, you knew the talking point you were feeding into. I believe you do a wonderful job at representing your sub-district, and I truly do. But that was hurtful, and it's been something that has been played into by multiple members of this board. I'm sorry you're getting the brunt of my verbal lashing here, but I think you understand. I don't know what it's going to take for all of us to step back for a second and ask ourselves, why are we having the reactions that we are having? Why are we saying the things that we are saying? And why are we quiet when we are quiet? I don't know what it's going to take for Omaha to say that human life is more important than sports. I don't know what it's going to take for us as a society to start using science again. I just don't. The only thing that actually does trickle down in our economy is putting the lives of people below us at risk. And that's all presidents know. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Ryan. Any other comments from the board? Seeing none, we'll move to public comment. It is 6:50. We have 23 public comment forms. Anyone that comes and speaks at the podium is required to wear the mask over their nose. If you do not have a mask or not wearing a mask, there will be a mask provided for you at the podium. This isn't just for you, this is for others that are also coming up to speak. The board has adopted policy 8346, which provides public comment for a period of 1 hour. That same policy limits individual speakers to a maximum of 5 minutes. We ask that you respect that time limit. Mr. Ray will let you know when you have 1 minute remaining and when you have 30 seconds remaining. If you are in need of an interpreter, please let Mr. Ray know and one will be provided for you. If the subject of your public comment is related to a particular student or staff member, we ask that you not mention the student or staff member by name and instead provide that information to Mr. Ray. He will assist us into those types of details, looking into those types of details for you. If you do not get an opportunity and would like to submit any written commentary, please submit it to Mr. Ray and he will make sure each board member gets a copy. As a reminder, we ask that you please spell your name and state your address before you begin your public comment. It is now 6:51. Mr. Perlman.
I want to make a motion to suspend board policies, and I'm actually going to go in both directions here. I'm going to ask that we suspend the rule limiting public comment to 1 hour, but at the same time, I'm also going to move that we reduce by just 1 minute the public comment, which will take us to about 1 hour and 32 minutes of comment. I think 4 minutes is just, it's kind of fair in both directions, so that's a motion I'm going to make.
I second.
So there's a motion by Mr. Perlman to remove the maximum period, but lower the maximum speaking limit to 4 minutes. Second by Ms. Ryan. Any other discussion? Mrs. Godding.
I will vote for that just so that we can keep moving. So I would just encourage everyone to talk very quickly and maybe skip something if somebody else has already said it, that it should help us to get through fairly quickly.
Thank you. Mr. Ray, roll call, please.
Cassidy,
Aye.
Dotting,
Aye.
Holman,
Aye.
Cracky,
No.
Perlman,
Aye.
Ryan,
Aye.
Smith,
Aye.
Snow.
Aye.
7-0.
Motion carries. Thank you. It is now 6:52. Each speaker has 4 minutes. Our first speaker is Lisa Shields.
First, Mr. Snow, I wanted to mention I have a medical exemption for masks. Am I needing to wear one to speak?
No, you're fine. You're good.
Okay, thank you. Good evening, OPS board members
Please
and Dr.
state your,
Logan.
spell your name and state your address. Sorry.
My name is Liz Shields, Lizshields, and my address is Hillcrest Drive in Omaha, 68132.
Thank you.
Good evening, OPS board members and Dr. Logan. First, let me just say that I am aware of the current phases and motions being taken for a safe return to school. However, I do think there is more here that needs to be said. I do not believe this is a conversation we should even need to be having. All children need to be in school, though I do understand the reality of what society has experienced this year and the fear and unpredictability that we were faced with. It is my opinion, based on the current status of the situation, as well as the decisions of all neighboring schools in the state of Nebraska, that our children are safe and should be able to attend school in person, if that is the personal choice that the families are making. Remote learning could still be an option for those who do not feel comfortable sending their children to school as of yet. Also, I am here to speak on behalf of my 5-year-old son, Vinny, who requires special education services. We moved to OPS district earlier this year in hopes of accessing better special education services for him, which were previously being denied to him in another district. OPS happens to be one of very few school districts that is blessed to have a facility which is able to provide for both the educational and medical needs of complex children from kindergarten through age 21. This school is called J.P. Lord School, and it is a wonderful place with an incredible staff who are experienced in caring for children like Vinny. J.P. Lord School had given our family hope when we had none, that my child will be able to have a learning environment tailored to his unique needs, as all children should. Little did we know he would not have access to that learning environment for his kindergarten year. He has not been able to attend school due to the district's shift to fully remote learning. Instead of learning from his peers teachers, and therapists, he's at home. When we moved to the district, he was able to attend pre-K for 2 days, then it was spring break, and then they never went back. This is not the experience he deserves to be having. Vinny requires physical therapy, occupational therapy, speech, and vision therapy. All of these require in-person instruction and an adult working directly with him. It is important to note that Vinny was severely brain injured at birth as a result of medical negligence. It seems that the theme of our lives has continuously been struggle, injustice, and uncertainty. By closing schools, you are saying to me that my child, who's legally blind, needs to be able to use a screen to learn on that his eyes cannot even see. By closing schools, you're saying that my child, who cannot walk, no matter how much physical
1 minute.
therapy I do with him, needs to be confined to his home instead of learning to socialize with his peer group in a social learning environment. By closing schools, you're saying that my child that cannot talk, who's 5 years old but developmentally an infant, is supposed to benefit from the language being used in a video chat format, which he cannot understand at all. By closing schools, you're saying my child, who's tube-fed, prone to seizures, is not only my responsibility to keep healthy and safe constantly, but also my responsibility to educate as well.
30
And
seconds.
somehow, after all that is said and done, I'm supposed to figure out how to make a living and to provide for our basic needs. The exhaustion of 24/7 caregiving duties for a lifetime of caring for another human being is unreal, and I would not wish it upon my worst enemy. I love my son more than I could ever explain, but I'm also a person too. I have my own needs and I have my limits. Gonna skip all this because I'm almost out of time, sorry. I place the families are being stressed to the point of no return. As a society,
That's
we need to
time.
be supporting one another and providing the means in which to support those who are not able to manage the complex needs of fragile individuals without community support. I place the responsibility of this in your hands as the public school system to fill those gaps in services and provide the necessary support for these families. When schools are closed, none of this is provided.
Thank you, Ms. Shields. Ms. Shields, could we get a copy of that? So if you can give that to Mr. Ray before you leave today, we can make sure every board member gets a copy so they can finish your speech. Up next is Lisa Carlson. Please state your name and spell your name and state your address. Thank you.
Lisa Carlson, LISACARLSON, 6010 North 166th Street, 68116. So I do have a prepared speech, but I'm going to say, actually, Ms. Godding, thank you for the acknowledgement that on the work, but also I don't think that what you were saying the other day about not being able to understand because you had a child that played sports that you don't care about kids. I think that is just that once you've had kids, sometimes your perspective does change. I was a young adult once, didn't have kids, and I thought I knew it all. And then you have kids, and then you realize maybe some things change. I think that's all she was trying to say. Anyway, members of the board and the Superintendent Logan, after listening to Tuesday's special meeting, I want to acknowledge that yes, you are making difficult decisions. You're trying your best, you're in a non-paid position, and that you all care about kids. You made a decision that you thought was right with information that you had. But it's 4 weeks later, we have more information, and the one thing you didn't address was that schools across the country, our state, and in this city made different decisions, and everyone's intention was to do what was right for and safe for the kids in their districts. But the difference in impact of your decision has been very harsh for many of our kids. What wasn't discussed was in a remote plan or a 3-2 plan, parents with health and safety concerns have the option to keep kids home and out of sports. But in our current remote model, my kid is forced to be home, and I have no choice. We all moved on with remote. That's fine. But hindsight is 20/20. And other districts, they did our social experiment for us. They sent kids back to school and sports, and right now they're succeeding. Teachers who were once scared and nervous are working through challenges and doing it safely. The reason parents are so frustrated, or some of them, us, are, is that, and the reason we had to have a special meeting on Tuesday was because we get new information on COVID. We see how some schools are getting kids back into school, and how some school districts, even today and across the country, are reversing decisions to get kids back in school. We hadn't heard anything from you. So after hearing the administration's plan for a phased return and hearing Superintendent Logan tell you that we have to start getting comfortable with some risk, you have a decision to make. As a board, you can continue to drag your heels and get defensive, or you can do what good leaders do: acknowledge new information is available and make a decision to support plans for getting most of our kids back to school, sports, or activities. With a small group of OPS parents, I spoke last night with Dr. Logan, and what I heard is that she is committed to starting next week, phasing back to the 3-2 plan by October 19th, and a return to 100% as quickly as possible. She is committed to winter sports taking place, or at least telling our athletes as early as possible if this is not going to happen. And on Tuesday, I heard almost all of you say that you will support whatever Superintendent Logan decides. So as a board, I encourage you to work with all of your constituents to support all students who want to remain remote and those who want to be live and in person for education. Over the next few weeks, we ask that you and the district leaders look for and support innovative options and be flexible. We will never achieve your definition of equity, Ms. Cassidy, and we don't agree that one group can't have something just because no one can. If that was truly the district's philosophy, then the IB program would be at all high schools. But we need to help as many kids as possible, even if we can't help them all. And even though my daughter's a volleyball player and I don't expect to see volleyball back, I 100% support cross country or golf being allowed to return, and I do hope to cheer on the South High players as they, I hear, have a very good shot at winning the state title. So thank you for your time, your service, and finding a way, despite your preferences and your political leanings, to move forward.
Our next speaker is Steve Owens. Mr. Owens, please spell your name and state your address.
My name's Steve Owens, spelled S-T-E-V-E-O-W-E-N-S. My address is 5408 North 99th Street, 68134. Tonight, good evening, board. Tonight I'd like to bring up the fact that a newspaper article that was brought to my attention in Omaha World Herald on September 3rd for making us all essential personnel. The Douglas County Health System and I believe the state of Nebraska are behind this. I just want to state that that wanting to make school district employees essential workers. Well, I'm here to tell you we are essential to our families, our friends, and our health matters as much as children's health do. This virus is dangerous to all. We should be allowed to quarantine like the students. The staff health is very important and vital to the success of OPS. If we have symptoms, we should be allowed to test and stay home and come back at 100% healthy. Also, as the union president, I'm encouraging all our members to wear the proper mask, gloves, and hand washing, etc. at all times. All of us are trying our very best to stay safe. So I encourage you all to rethink or think hard before you make this decision that could and will impact our lives as well as others. Thank you.
Our next speaker is Michelle Crabtree, and after Michelle is Stacy Honeycutt. So be ready to come up after Michelle. All right, please spell your name and state your address. Thank you.
Michellecrabtree. I'm on Valley Circle in Omaha, 68105. Here with me is my daughter. She is in middle school at Norris. When we first started with the remote learning, we were told that she would receive phone calls every day from her special education teacher. We have not gotten a single phone call via her IEP. Per her IEP, she is supposed to receive help in math and English and language arts. And she has been told that she is responsible for setting up an appointment for a one-on-one with her special education teacher during office hours, which can be anywhere from 15 minutes in between classes to a half an hour in between classes. I have hired a private tutor to help her with her math for things that she doesn't understand. Her grandfather does tutor her in math as well. With communication problems, we have been receiving, oh, well, we're working on it, they're placating us, and they are just delivering the same answers that, we're working on it, everybody's receiving the same problems, everything will get better. For technical problems, she has an unexcused absence because the way before Labor Day, classes started and they were set up automatically where everybody joined at a certain time. As of September 8th, they had to, go to a different tab and wait for their teacher to invite them to join the meeting. Well, when there are technical issues and she doesn't receive that email until the last tab of the class, she's late to class. And what other technical issues do you have? Oh yes, saving her assignments to a folder, so her assignments are being counted as late. And she's doing her homework, everything is being done on time. And we are communicating with her teachers. It is frustrating, very, very frustrating. As having had the virus, yes, I understand that we need to get back in the classroom.
1
She is
minute.
anxious to get back into the classroom. And Ms. Ryan, having suffered from infertility myself, I understand where you're coming from. Thank you, everyone, for listening.
Thank you.
I'm sorry, can we make sure, our Chief Academic Officer is here to make sure you connect with her before you leave. Mrs. Comine is right there. Thank you.
Up next is Stacy Honeycutt. After Mrs. Honeycutt is Jen Dartman. Please spell your name and state your address. Thank you.
Stacy Honeycutt, S-T-A-C-E-Y, Honeycutt, H-U-N-N-I-C-U-T-T, 5972 North 30th Street. Board members, you put out a form today that says for 2021 school year enrollment is estimated at 53,843. I came to the board meeting last time saying that we were not invited to the table to make decisions based on children from our centers. I have the numbers today. As of August 21st, 2020, actively in Douglas County, we have 31,390 children in our child care facilities, which is approximately half of the numbers. Not stating that all of them are school age at this moment, but we all know that children transition into kindergarten and their early elementary grades. The quality of their early learning experience becomes evident in their capacity and motivation to thrive in classrooms. Those who have the benefit of stimulating and supportive early interactive and environments are most likely to have development, the traits of character, conduct, intellectual, enable them to listen attentively, understand and follow complex directions, moderate their behavior in social settings, and read at the appropriate age level. I'm coming to the board tonight to say I'm not talking about yesterday or today, but I'm speaking to you about the future of our children, that I'm asking the board to look into the future of partnering with the local child care centers. I found out there is a program called the 2 Sixpence Grants that is a partnership between private child care providers and the school district. It says nearly 30,000 or more than 40% of Nebraska children between birth and age 3 are at a face risk factor that threatens their chances of arriving at kindergarten developmentally or par with their peers. These children are more likely to struggle in K-12 system, attain a lower level of education, enter the criminal justice system and offenders, and develop chronic health problems as working adults. There's a LB 547 says maximizing existing resources and increase the flexibility communities need to provide young at-risk children with early experiences that close the achievement gap before kindergarten. It says over 60,000 children ages 0 to 5 are at risk of
1
failing
minute.
in school. It says this is to transform the already successful early childhood public-private partnerships known as Sixpence and addresses local workforce shortages by engaging the licensed child care community in partnership with the school districts. And there is only 2. Out of the 687 child care facilities in Douglas County, there's only 2
30 seconds.
facilities that are in this grant. And I'm asking the board to take a look at this grant so we can partnership and close the achievement gap for our children here that are at risk. Thank you.
Thank you. Up next is Jen Dartman. After Dartman is Linda Hansen. Please spell your name and state your address. Thank you.
My name is Jen Dartman. It is Jenn, D as in Delta, ART as in Tango, M as in Mary, N as in Nancy, N as in Nancy. I am coming here tonight as a parent, and I have 2 children who are enrolled in OPS. They are both elementary age. I have a 4th grader and a 1st grader. And I want to thank you, Dr. Logan, for doing the remote learning. It has been very, very well done with our school that we attend. We have had very minimal technology issues, and those I chalk up to pure just internet issues that happen in our neighborhood. And I want to encourage remote learning for the next quarter as well as at least an option, if not full remote. And that is because Douglas County is still at least 6.4% positivity rate, which is above the 5% that you had mentioned. I also want to say that 37.5% of the cases in Douglas County are community spread still. And that terrifies me and terrifies other parents that I am in contact with, as well as several teacher friends for OPS. And teachers in at least 5 states have died since the school started back in August throughout the entire country. 2 of those teachers were in Iowa and Missouri, which are states that are close to us and have similar positivity rates. And around 38% of the cases in Omaha are people under the age of 30, so that's including our young children, who may or may not be showing signs of the virus and could transfer it to teachers or parents. And within the last week, Masters Elementary had to move all of its teachers home because they did have a miniature outbreak of 5 of the teachers. And that is with no students in the school, and that is with teachers wearing masks and teachers not eating together. And then Millard has reported over 200 students and staff members out because of exposure or positive cases, and that's just also within the last week. I don't feel that it is completely safe to go 100% in school. So I would also agree with going to the family 3-2 model as well. Thank you for your time.
Our next speaker is Linda Hansen, and after Hansen is Nikki Telus. Please spell your name and state your address.
Linda Hansen, Linda Hanson. I live on South 39th Street, 68105. I'm the proud grandmother of 2 beautiful granddaughters. One attends South High, well, not attends, and one at Bancroft Elementary. The remote learning is very difficult for them. They both have IEPs. The younger granddaughter has ADHD, which makes it hard for her to pay close attention to her lessons. However, she has an excellent teacher who checks in on her every day. The older granddaughter has a problem. The apps on her iPad do not always work. Some of the work that she turns in, she is told it has not been received because she had to send it by email. Evidently, the teachers are not either looking at that email or they are not accepting it. I feel that some teachers maybe need to understand which of their students have IEPs and need a little bit of extra attention or need a separate way to communicate. Other than that, I think that most of the technical problems that most of the parents are having are causing the frustrations. And we need to understand where we stand on getting these problems solved, other than hearing we're working on it. Perhaps there could be a liaison on social media that could give us updates. Newsletters are fine, but you don't see anything on an everyday basis or a current basis that gives you solid information on where we stand. Hotspots don't work all the time. Wireless, when you're sharing it with your children and you're working at the same time, blips out. Children with IEP lose their concentration, they get frustrated, they get angry. You have to take your time to calm them down. You have to communicate with the school to get the teacher to answer your children when they do reach out. And that is a problem that my high school granddaughter has. She has reached out for herself, but she doesn't always get an answer back, which puts her behind also, because she's worried about what she's already missed and doesn't understand and can't concentrate on the present. Communication, communication, communication would help solve a lot of our frustrations. I know that there are things on the internet which some people do not have the ability to access, and I know that newsletters are sent
1 minute.
out. But we do need more communication in whatever way is possible, updates on what is being done rather than we are working on it. It would be greatly appreciated to alleviate what we are dealing with. I think that's the most important thing in almost every situation where people are having problems. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Nikki Telus, and after Telus is Jabari Wright. Please spell your name and state your address. Thank you.
I'm Nikki, Nickitellis, and I live off North 26th Circle in 68131 zip code. I want to first start by saying I know everybody is affected by COVID-19 and what's going on right now. I do understand that OPS as a district is doing their best in dealing and addressing all the needs of all the children in the various districts that are within our district. I do support remote learning. I think it was one of the best decisions that OPS has made in a long time. But what I do not do is lie to my kids. I have two children in OPS right now, a second grader and a third grader. There is no Santa Claus, there is no Easter Bunny, and the world has been turned upside down. It is not normal right now. That being said, to expect these children to have a normal school day is ridiculous when they're at home. And until they're back in school, the normal things that happen during the school day should not be taking place on the screen. My second and third grader, my third grader has an IEP, and he has a disability, a neuroimmunological disorder. So he's immune compromised, which is why I support remote learning. But he also has a learning disability. And he has ADD as well. So his father and I have to be there all the time, one of us, to help him focus, as well as help him read and assist with doing his assignments. There's a teacher and there's a para. In the classroom, in a normal situation, that makes sense. The para can assist. On Teams, that makes no sense because the para is sitting right there doing absolutely nothing, and she can't even answer the questions or help my son read the questions to his quiz. I don't understand why that's happening. It makes no point to me. Before Corona came, screen time, anything over 3 hours was excessive, and it was bad for the kids. Now they're on there 7 hours a day, 5 days a week. It's still bad. If it was bad before Corona, it's still bad now. My issue with this is part of the school day is being spent on art, PE, and music. My kids have coloring books and crayons. They don't need to be in front of a screen to do art. My kids listen to K-Love. They don't need to be on the screen
1 minute.
to listen to music. And they run around my house every chance they get and go outside when it's nice, so they don't need PE on the screen. A more productive use of this time and teacher resources would be to focus on reading, writing, spelling, and math, because that's what's essential to the learning for all of our kids, especially our special needs kids. I think that our kids with IEPs were
30
already
seconds.
being left behind, and they're being more left behind with the way that the school day is being orchestrated during remote learning. We need to shorten the day and focus on what's essential to what they need right now. And when schools are back open, then let's go back to normal. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Telus. Our next speaker is Jabari Wright. And after Wright, we have Nick Abdallah.
Jabari Wrighton is Jabari, last name Wright.
And your address?
5209 Boyd Street.
Thank you.
68104 zip code. Thank you for this opportunity to come before you and speak. I want to address the fact that first I definitely understand going back to normal is becoming a cliche statement right now. So this is not normal. It probably won't be normal for a while. And because of that, there needs to be a different way that you approach remote learning for those parents that decide to, when we do open schools up again, for the parents that decide to keep their children at home and continue on with the remote learning. I've sat in the classroom, sat next to my child while he's learning, and we spend an hour and a half going over protocol about how to conduct ourselves using a model that's based on in-house classroom learning. That's not a wise thing to do. Secondly, the program that Microsoft Teams is a good program. However, it's not. It doesn't necessarily accommodate 20 plus people staying in sync, which is why the apps crash, which is why you don't have access, which is why you can't log in regularly. And then procedurally, the apps that you use and the protocols that you use to actually get the teacher's attention they're not working right because it's too many people logged into the class. Excuse me. We went over, in class, we went over actually a fire drill procedure for something. So that's already telling you that we're not using or thinking outside the box when it comes to remote learning. We're still just transplanting this in-house model to online learning and thinking it's supposed to work properly. I've witnessed children getting ridiculed and scolded because they're not raising their hands and they're not waiting to speak in turn when it takes 10 to 15 minutes for the child to be recognized by the teacher, and the teacher's so amped up in trying to keep a schedule, their actual learning is not going on. So again, I implore you to think about another way to deliver this remote learning so that we can accommodate children with IEPs, people with learning disabilities, special conditions, and just regular learning, period, to concentrate on the reading, writing, math. Those things are very important.
1
but
minute.
We also need to recognize the fact that you need to shorten up the school day and also maybe go to a alternative school day so that the class sizes are smaller and that you're able to effectively teach the children. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Wright. Up next is Nick Abdallah. And after Nick is Jessica Fortes. I apologize if I didn't pronounce your last name correctly.
Nick Northern Abdullah. And
You don't have to state your address. You just just state your name, not your address.
Nagmeldin.
Perfect.
I am a runner at Omaha South High. I transferred to the South my junior year thinking that I was gonna run varsity, but I had to sit out for the whole season because that was the NSI rules. Although I live 5 minutes away from South. I didn't get accepted to go to South. I went to Bryan. I was 18th place in state my freshman year. My sophomore year, I was in 7th place. This year was my final year to prove that I worked so hard to win state because that was my goal. My goal was to win the state by myself and as a team. This year's our last year for all the seniors that are doing sports. Please give us a chance to prove it. I know you guys are trying to keep us safe. At least give us a chance. We'll do anything to stay safe. We'll even wear the masks to run and stay safe. Why can't we have the same opportunity as every other schools? Because I know that some schools have COVID and they're still running. At least give us a chance. We'll do anything again. If you want, let us represent our OPS schools. Let us run unattended. We simply want the opportunity to succeed, for a chance for a better future. Represent our South High family. Let us run. Thank you.
Thank you, Nick. Up next is Jessica. She's not here? Okay. Up next is John Tripp. I think he's coming from the audience. Oh, yes. He's in the auditorium. He's on his... Is he coming? Oh, obviously. Until John gets here, we'll go ahead with Miss Thelma Sims. Please spell your name and state your address. Thank you.
My name is Thelma Sims, T-A-T-L-M-A. Tell you how committed I am. Today is my 62nd birthday.
Happy birthday.
And my family is out to dinner, but I'm here because I'm committed to what I do. But it's been said. No. I don't want that. It's been said over and over again. I have about 40 kids in my facility that I'm doing virtual learning with, and I have never been so taxed in my life. So, as Ms. Honeycutt said, and I've heard it before, that it's truly going to take a partnership to make this work. Because just as frustrated as the kids are, we have to maintain, stand, cry, work. So I want to get through this like everybody else, but we cannot do it alone. It is really going to take the board making a commitment to step outside of the box, as we all had to do, and work together so that our kids have a successful school year, whether they're with me, heaven forbid, or they're back with you, because you can have your darlings back. But I want to make sure they come back with a sense of accomplishment and ready to continue to learn. Because right now, they still think they're on summer vacation. Thank you.
Ms. Sims, can you get your address?
Happy birthday.
Your address?
You really need my address? Because I really don't, but you can come over. 7230 Florence Boulevard, Omaha, Nebraska, 68112. And when I come over, if you have some time, you can come over and help us. Help these children learn. Thank you.
Thank you. And again, happy birthday. Up next is John Tripp. And because of the mask, I don't know if people are OPS students. So OPS students do not have to state their address, but
Okay.
spell your name and state your address, please. Thank you.
Okay, John Tripp, JOHNTRIPP, address 9319 Meadow Drive.
Thank you.
Put this on. This is uniforms that those boys helped us design last year, and you know, they were looking forward to wearing them this year. And they've told me they're willing to run unattached, which in college we did that occasionally, where you turn your jersey inside out and run that way. So, you know, we're real anxious to take any opportunity that would come our way. And I just wanted to start by saying, aren't those kids pretty amazing? I mean, it's just, I'm really excited to see them actually be part of this, and that what they're learning will be around for the rest of their life. So I'm proud of these kids and, you know, care about them very much. And I wanted to say thank you to all of you, because I know that you are experiencing tremendous stress and pressure in these times, and just like teachers, students, and parents, everybody is going through a lot right now. So I just want to really send some sincere thank yous to everybody. John Tripp, been 17 years at Omaha South, and love it, feeling like home. Was a Buffett Award winner, All-American in college at the NAI level, academic All-American, but the best part of all of this has really been working with these kids. And you know, you see them finish a race and do something they didn't think was possible, and the smile goes from one ear to the other, and it's just amazing. And you know, whether we get that shot or not, I just want to say that it's a privilege to work with these kids, and I really am proud of our district. So as I was kind of thinking about it on a morning run, I think about my son trying to learn how to ride a bike, and you know, it terrifies me to the point I don't want to let him even try it. You know, I'm really scared of him falling down and scraping up his elbow or hitting his head. You know, he's got a helmet on, so but it's just scary, and I know that we can take as many precautions as we can, but at some point we're going to have to let him go. And I'm not sure if this is the right point or not, but I know there's going to be bumps and scrapes along the way, and I just think that you know, I see some of the other schools with their kids out running and smiles on the face and endorphins flowing, feeling good, and I wish that
1 minute.
we could have that opportunity at Omaha South as well, at all OPS schools. So I guess, you know, if students want to participate, wonderful. If they don't, I think there should be total grace. If they don't want to participate, it's their decision. I'm still undecided whether it should be our decision, I guess. So that's one thought that I had. And other things, I've got kids, you know, who are working. There's a girl that just missed here because she couldn't be here tonight. So I just wanted to stand up and kind of talk for them and let you know that their feelings. This is definitely out of my wheelhouse. So I want you to know that these kids, they really have hearts that are huge, so big they shouldn't even fit in their chests. You know, they're just amazing. And if we can be part of it, if we all agree that this is actually something they should partake in, then I'd be
That's time.
a supporter. So thank you for your time.
Thank you. Up next is Richard Webb, and after Mr. Webb is Robert Miller.
Good evening, Board and Dr. Logan. Richard Webb, live off of
Good
24th, 68111. First of all, I want to thank you for your comments earlier, Ms. Ryan, Board Member Ryan. As a father, a servant of the community, a father of four, 3 girls, 1 boy, and I have the experience of having elementary, middle, and high school. I'll tell you, the decision to go to virtual, I believe, was one of the best decisions also. We have had a wonderful experience so far with the virtual learning. Our children are continuously engaging in virtual, and I am seeing the commitment from the teachers that are making class fun, even for my 9-year-old youngest daughter, engaging with her classmates and learning new things. Of course, this is uncharted times that we're in, but I will say I'm very proud of the largest school district having a very diverse population that it serves, as you can tell from the comments from tonight, and trying to do the best as each one of you all to keep them safe, understanding that safety is our #1 priority because we cannot educate them if they are not here. I know there is a lot of push going to each and every single one of you all, but what I will know and what I do believe each one of you all will do will be continually to use your passion that you have to serve in this commitment, because we know the time it takes to sit on this board, to serve on this board, and the daggers that are continuously thrown at you. But what I will also say is I've seen the unity of this board as we have gone through the last couple of years, with the understanding that specifically with our Dr. Logan, with our superintendent, she was the first one to really step down on this COVID-19 and really start thinking about how we were going to look as a district when she took a lot of daggers when that first came. But then, of course, whenever it all came down, it was one of the best decisions. And I have continually seen that pattern as we've gone throughout this time frame. And like I stated, this is uncharted territory, but I believe in each one of you all's leadership. And when I go through sports, my son is a freshman in high school right now, and he plays football. And one of the hardest decisions that I've had to make, but I've learned from my father, it's better to be a father than a friend, was to pull my son from his freshman year of football that he still hates me for. But I know that at the end of the day, I have to make fatherly decisions and understand that his safety is my #1 concern, because with my children is how my legacy and my wife's legacy is continued. So I just want to stand up here and motivate each one of you all with these positions that you hold. Continuously use them in the best nature, and remember, we cannot educate our kids if we cannot keep them safe. So thank you all.
Thank you, Mr. Webb. Up next is Robert Miller. After Robert is Adam Gaucho.
My name is Robert Miller. That's ROBERTMILLER. I reside at 7301 North 107th Avenue in Omaha 68122. Good evening, President Snow, Vice President Holman, Superintendent Dr. Logan, and board members. I am the president of the Omaha Education Association. I stand before you to say thank you, as well as to make an ask. During this pandemic, there were no manuals to follow, no playbook to utilize, or a guide to navigate these uncharted times. While I don't want to look back in the past and say we should have done this opposed to that, as that doesn't do anything, the district decided a course, the teachers adapted accordingly to make it work, not once, but twice. Thank you for putting the safety of our students and staff first and opening back up this fall. That was not an easy decision, but the right one. The decision to go full remote is one that has required a huge workload for teachers. Teachers are stressed, overwhelmed, on the verge of burnout, teaching virtually in the new realm, one that requires a new kind of planning and troubleshooting when students and teachers get kicked out of teams. Things happen that are out of their control, yet teachers are still expected to instruct or are blamed that they are not prepared or haven't reached out to parents. When teachers' plan time is used to cover classes and not to prepare for their own delivery of instruction, this adds additional burden requiring teachers to take work home or stay late. During the BOE workshop just on Tuesday, you were presented with information in draft form for a possible 3-2 model and what it would look like. During that discussion, it was stated that the district is asking a lot of their teachers with the changes that are taking place. Yes, in fact, you are asking a lot of these teachers to do more with less time to deliver sound instruction. The term concurrently teaching was used to describe how teachers would instruct. This means an in-person classroom full of 10 or 15 students and an additional 15 students virtually. The teacher must instruct, manage behaviors of those in class and virtually, while still maintaining 6 feet away from students to assist. All of this happens while wearing a mask. Seems simple. Anyone could do it, right? According to some employees of a few school districts that have attempted this format is not sustainable. Teachers are on the verge of walking away. Imagine, if you will, a meeting of this board. Half the members are in person, half the members are at home. There are issues with technology, and the presenters must appeal to those in the room and those electronically. And with no help from the chief of staff, you have to troubleshoot. It's trying, it's frustrating. I'm sure you would do your best, but ultimately those online would be left out of the discussion that takes place. Is this what you want our students, for our students? So what is the best plan to move forward?
1 minute.
No plan is going to be ideal. We must continue to educate 54,000 students of OPS. If this district is considering to move to a 3-2 model, I strongly urge you to reach out to those teachers who have the knowledge and whereabout of what that plan is going to look like, and not at a 3,000-foot level. In closing, this has not been an easy feat. There have been hurdles to overcome. We continue to have a learning curve, and the workload is increasingly exponentially.
30 seconds.
But don't ever underestimate a teacher. The job will get done. But at what cost? Be considerate of what you're asking teachers to do. Be concerned of their mental health and check in on them. Teachers are asked, just do your best. Teaching is hard. The pandemic has not made it easier, but instruction has to continue. Teachers have adapted at a host of new challenges, and during this time, and asks keep coming. Please treat teachers like the professionals they are, understand that their workload is, and offer to assist in the heavy lifting as we educate 54,000 students. And just a reminder that doing your best doesn't mean working yourself to the potential of a mental
Thank you,
breakdown.
Mr. Miller. Please, if you can, could you please email your speech to the board, Mr. Ray, so we can finish it if you had anything else on there. Up next is Adam Gaucho. Please spell your name and state your address, and after Adam is Adam Ali. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Adam Gaucho. It's ADAMGOTSCHALL. I live at 14562 Potter Circle in Bennington, Nebraska. We do fall in an OPS school district. Ms. Goding is my representative. And the sources that I'm going to cite want to remain anonymous. Nevertheless, the first source that I'm going to cite is, in fact, an OPS teacher. I will just say with these bullet points how this distance learning is going from their perspective. Student with special education services issued a mini iPad with no district connectivity, had issues getting connected, got a new one brought out to them, still had issues, then had a district issued iPad given to them and still has issues. I will address that here in a second. Sorry, I get a little nervous when I'm speaking. Another student and 3 siblings, so 4 kids total, are totally unable to get T-Mobile access along with the hotspot access. They are still relying on packets for their education, despite the fact that they have, in fact, received district-issued iPads. Students are constantly being dropped. Their connection is kicking them off of their classes. Kids are unable to get on at all. Their attendance is in fact reflecting it. A child's iPad will freeze up every time while using the T-Mobile network. They take a quiz on Teams, yet they have no problems taking it on a personal phone with personal data. So, now that we've outlined those issues, I have some more notes on my phone, so give me just a second. Let's see here. A friend of mine who works on the Learning Communities Board had said that, again, wants to remain anonymous, said that the Prairie STEM, so you guys can reach out to them, did a technology analysis and found only 15% of the devices work properly that have been issued so far. So in this contract with T-Mobile, we should have all known that, I shouldn't say we should have all known, experts should have known that you cannot, in fact, add thousands of devices onto a network and expect it to work. That just doesn't work, you know. So my issue is this. My child goes, my wife's a special education teacher, has been with the district for 21 years, and her heart and soul, God bless her, is in the lower income or impoverished communities, okay? She has spent all 21 years in there, and believe you me, I've tried to get her to come out to, where we live so that she can live closer, work closer to where we live.
1 minute.
Absolutely not, is what she has said to me. Her heart and soul goes into these kids, okay? I would put her up against any special education teacher in this district, and I guarantee you that she is the best, okay? So when we deal with these issues, I mean, how are we servicing these children well? How are we dealing with this? Because, I mean, I think T-Mobile got the contract because there's some inside sources there that I won't
30
name. I
seconds.
do have names, but I won't name them here at this meeting. Anyway, my main concern is this. My child has an IEP. He needs to be in school 5 days a week. He is a hands-on learner, period, okay? So since I'm a little short on time, I want to address Ms. Ryan here. I completely understand what you're saying as far as being blamed for a person that does not have kids, because when I worked in a mental health facility, I can't name it, I
That's
was
time.
blamed for the same thing. So I appreciate you, and thank you for your time.
Thank you, Gaucho. Up next is Adam Ali. All you have to do is just spell your name, and then you can begin. And after you, 1 second, is Nagmelin Abdali. That individual's up next after you. Go ahead, floor is yours.
ADAM ALI 2922 T Avenue. I am a senior cross-country runner at Omaha South High School. Last time I was here, I was being invited to celebrate our middle school city's championship title. Today, there is no celebration. It is devastating that I must ask to have the same opportunity that 95% of Nebraska high schoolers have. How can we sit in despair while others take what is ours? OPS is trying to protect us from a danger, and I understand that. But I have been around danger my whole life, and this is no different. Protect me from the drug dealers in my neighborhood. Protect me from the gunshots I hear so often. Danger has never closed the door for success until now. We plead that you reopen the door and let my brothers and I achieve what we have been working for our whole life. If you won't let us represent our OPS school, let us run unattached. We simply want the opportunity to succeed for a chance, a better future, and to represent our South High family. Thank you.
Thank you, Adam. Up next is Abdali. Abdallah. So the individual must have filled out 2 different sheets with 2 different addresses. Is that correct? Thank you. Up next is Sean Gibbons. And I believe Sean is in the auditorium. After Sean is Kenny Wedginger. That individual's in the auditorium as well. And while those 2 are on their way, I hope someone's getting them, we can go ahead and have Jacqueline Casey come on up. Please spell your name and state your address before you begin. And the floor is yours.
Good evening. My name is Jacqueline Casey, 3703 Mormon Street, 68112. I'm going to read this first. First, I want to thank Dr. Logan for speaking to me the other day, Ms. Colmine for coming out to a meeting that I had at my child care center, and Lisa Utterback, who has been a running bunny, and she's really been a big help to us. My name is Jacqueline Casey. I'm the owner and director of Crayon Castle Child Care and Preschool. We have been in operation for 34 years. We are committed to the children and the families we care for, and have opted to help them in any way we can during this difficult time in our lives. It is not an option for my families to quit their jobs, hire nannies, or have other family members take their kids. Most of the children in our care are from single-family homes, lower-income households, and dealing with stressors of economic and social obstacles. i.e. putting food on the table, keeping a roof over their kids' heads, and parenting their children. We rented a space we felt would be conducive to set up a remote learning site when it was the 3-2 model. We were prepared and we felt that we could manage this beautifully. When we went to full remote, we ended up having 38 children, school-age children in our care with 9 staff to help institute this project in the beginning. We were assisting the children for 6 different schools, including Ponca, Rose Hill, Florence, Springville, Melaleuca, and McMillan Junior High. We did not miss a beat during this pandemic. We have stayed open for our families since 3/15/2020. We have not experienced one incident of this virus attacking our children, staff, or families. We also have had a meeting with 9 other directors of early childhood centers and school-age programs. There were approximately 1,000 children between the centers. There was not one reported case of the virus in the children, staff, or their families. All of our surrounding school districts are in schools and appear to be doing well. What is the reason our children are not in school? From day one, remote learning has been an absolute disaster, and an emotional response to children have been heartbreaking to witness. This experience has proven to be futile and disturbing and emotionally destructive to children, staff, and teachers. As I watch classroom teachers, my staff, and children working the program in our center, the stress is palpable. If the purpose of this endeavor was to educate the children, I am sorry, but I feel we have sorely missed our mark. After 8 days, this was in the beginning, now we're into 3, almost a month, we have observed the following obstacles. The promised hotspot connection to the internet is not working. The Microsoft Teams is not working. They're able to, we might out of 38 children have maybe 12 kids connected at one time. And we're talking kindergarten through junior high. And my junior high kids are there because they're in situations where they cannot stay home alone. So they need our help and they need our assistance. So anyway, the children are exhibiting the following behaviors: frequent headaches, nausea, emotional lability, and horribly defiant aggressive behaviors. It has been recommended by the AAP, the WHO, and the AHA that children 8 to 18 limit screen time to 2 hours per day. The symptoms exhibited by our children should ring alarm bells in everyone. I strongly believe that all remote learning from 3rd to 8th grade be limited to core curriculum only and finishing the school day by noon. Again, the AAP who recommends only 2 hours of screen time per day for our children 8 to 18. I also believe all elementary schools, only 2, making remote learning more manageable for people helping the children. Right now we have 6 people working to help all of these kids, and it's impossible. We're spreading ourselves way too thin.
30 seconds.
It appears truly that little thought was given by the leadership to make our programs in the working order and work the bugs out before we ever allowed our teachers or their children to be subjected to this form of education. In closing, I strongly encourage you to reconsider remote learning and realize that the damage being done to the children and the families, it's tough. We must demand that above suggestions be met quickly. What I wanted to do is get rid of the...
That's time.
Okay.
Thank you. Can you please, if you want, you can email us your written statement or give it to Mr. Ray for the Board of Education to look at. We'll appreciate it. Up next is Sean Gibbons. After Sean is Kinney Winginger, and after Kinney is Miss Gina Miller. Please spell your name and state your address. I apologize.
My name is Sean Gibbons. That's spelled S-E-A-N. Gibbons. I reside at 16028 Nottingham Drive. Thank you for allowing me this opportunity. My wife is a first grade teacher at Oak Valley Elementary in OPS. Full disclosure, my kids actually go to Millard, and until now, I've just been a spectator to what's happening at OPS. But I'm here tonight to support whatever the teachers think is best. If you have their support, then I'm with you. But if there are some, like my wife, that aren't quite sure, then my message is for them. We're a month into this experiment. The technology was purchased and rolled out. It was not without pain and hard work, but it's now in place. Students and faculty alike are finally finding their groove. It's working, despite our discomfort. In my house, I've been the champion for flexibility during this pandemic. It's imperative that we all remain nimble, compassionate, and accommodating during all this. I can appreciate that plans must evolve and adapt. However, how many times and how many ways can we pull the rug from under the teachers? We spent the entire summer suggesting we'd be back in the classroom. Teachers bravely prepared, both psychologically and emotionally, for all of this. Days before students arrived, the district had their own act of bravery and made the hard decision to go back to remote learning. And now, a month later, here we are contemplating a new direction. And likely, in a month or two, we'll find ourselves contemplating another direction. If 5% positivity rate is the metric for success, then damn it, let's get the community on board. As a city, we can do better. No one has ever become great by lowering standards. The acknowledgement that we're not there yet at 5% is not an excuse to give up. It's reason to try harder. Until we make those sacrifices as a community, it's hard to argue why we deserve to get what we want in all this. It's important to delineate between need and want. Statements suggesting we need to be in the classroom or we need to get back to normal are not helpful. Superlatives are not the answer. It's important to acknowledge the facts here. With all of us back in buildings, positivity rates will go up, not down. Without better testing, we will flounder. This notion that children back in schools adhering to social distancing requirements will be normal is a fallacy. Moving the goalpost seems like an easy answer. We don't allow ourselves to do it during normal circumstances when it comes to teaching and enrichment. Why are we willing to do it now when it comes to their safety? Let's stay apart and learn remotely until we can safely be together. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Gibbons. Our next speaker is Kenny Winginger. I apologize for the... And then after Kenny is Gina Miller. And after Gina Miller is our last speaker, Rebecca Mason.
Hi, Kenny Wingender, KENNWINGENDER, 5845 South 49th Street. I know many paras, I know many teachers inside OPS, and if you think this is working, you're fooling yourselves. You're not asking the right people. You're talking to people who have a parent at home, a grandparent at home. How about the kids who are at daycare? And there's 10, 15 kids there, all with tablets, all side by side, with the chaos and hearing other teachers talking. They can't focus, they can't do it, it's not working. You have kids who are at home where you have a 7th grader with a 1st grader and there's no adult in the house. Neither one of them are getting what they need or deserve by being at home. It's not right, it's not fair. We talk about trying to give the best for our kids, but we're not. They're falling behind. A lot of them are already behind, and they're falling farther behind because they're not getting what they need. They're not getting what they deserve. I get that their health is a major concern, and it should be an option. You're not asking the parents what they want. You're not taking into consideration what the parents who want what's best for their children and know their children what they want. You should be asking us what we want. Most of us want our kids in school where they belong, not 3-2, 5 days like it's supposed to be, so they get what they're supposed to get. I have a junior in high school. He's a really smart kid. He takes tough classes. He is the first person to tell you he needs to be in school. He needs the structure of school to succeed. They talk about sports and getting scholarships. How about academic scholarships that we are making it even harder for them to get because we are slowing their education down? We are making it harder on them to get educated. You have households with young siblings running around in the background, yelling, screaming. The kids can't concentrate. They're not getting what they need. Academics are supposed to be the big thing. That's what we're supposed to be so focused on, but we're tying their hands. We're not giving them what they need. They're getting a third of what they need. They're falling farther behind. It's not helping them. Extracurricular activities, not just sports, all extracurricular activities. These are pathways for children to develop and grow and to go to the next level, to get college scholarships. Do you realize we have kids that will not go on to college if they don't get a scholarship because of the amount of debt that they would go into? So now we're already taking that away from them.
1 minute.
We're making it harder for them to get to them goals. no matter what they are. We have kids who show up to school and pay attention so they can participate in their extracurricular activity. Now we're taking it away from them, so now they don't care about school anymore. I'm a product of that. All I wanted to do was wrestle and try and go to wrestling college. So I paid attention and did what I was supposed to do so that I could wrestle and try and get to the next level. My twin brother was a football player.
30
He couldn't
seconds.
play football anymore. Guess what? Didn't graduate high school, got a GED. And we all know in nowadays society, GEDs are nothing. You need a high school diploma to get anywhere. Even with regular jobs, you need a high school diploma. We are taking that away from kids. We need to get back in the classroom where they belong. I understand the health issues. If these are supposed to work, then we should be in school. If they don't work, we shouldn't be.
That's
then
time.
we shouldn't be wearing them. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Gina Miller. After Gina is Rebecca Mason.
Good evening.
Good evening.
My name is Gina Miller. I reside in Mrs. Godding's district. I am here this evening to speak about the state of our district. Before I start, I did hear a comment about some statistics in Millard, and I'm not sure if that was exactly accurate. As of 2 p.m. today, the district's dashboard for Millard, out of the 27,000 students that they have at Millard, and they've been in school full, or not with full activities, for a month now, and they have 5 confirmed cases and only 37 in quarantine. So I just want to put that out there to be clear. I'm here this evening to speak about the state of our district. I want to start with my personal thanks to our 9,000 teachers who have been asked so much and who are getting extremely frustrated. Every one of our students will tell you that the frustration levels, especially with the poor teachers that are working in the younger students, is really, really tough on them, and I appreciate everything that they're doing and continue to try and do, but we need to give them some support. I'm not really sure when things became you against us, but it sure feels like that right now. It really feels like it's you against us, and I'm disheartened that it has devolved to this. I want to take a moment to introduce you to the people in this room. This is OPS. We are OPS. These are the parents who run your PTOs, who donate food and supplies to your teachers, who volunteer in your schools, who pay your salaries, who are responsible for getting 2 major bonds passed in this district for over $800 million for our schools, who spend countless hours fundraising for our schools' needs in addition to the $800 million. This is OPS. These people believe in OPS, and they want OPS to thrive, and we all want a quality education, and we all want our students to be safe. These are the people who spent hours on talking points tonight to try and fit our passion and our frustrations and our things into a 4-minute spiel. Good, bad, or these all came to be heard. Good, bad, or indifferent, open or closed, risk or no risk, we are OPS. If you think that these parents care more about sports than about their kids' education or about people's lives, or they think less of other people in other parts of the district, you are sadly
1 minute.
mistaken. But we do know our kids, and we know the level of education and the level of education experience that we are expecting and that every other district in the state is getting. I have supported almost everyone on this board, and even when we have disagreed, I have stepped up for you and I have defended you. And we have board members now that are being petty, that are making campaign slogans, that are attacking each other, and it is
30
beneath
seconds.
all of us. I don't know when things have gotten turned so upside down, and I am really done with it. Dr. Logan, I have a great amount of respect for you, and I am not envious of the position that you have been put in. And I feel this board has put you into a horrible position. You asked repeatedly Tuesday night for feedback from the board, and you have asked, I think that the board should have supported whatever
That's
decision
time.
you were.
Thank you, Ms. Miller. If you could email your speech, your talking points, we appreciate it. Our last speaker is Rebecca Mason. Please spell your name and state your address, and the floor is yours.
My name is Rebecca A. McKittrick Mason, and I live at 3420 Cottonwood Lane, 68134. A lot of what that lady that just walked out of here said, I echo. I would like to start by thanking the teachers, because I couldn't imagine being a teacher right now, and I couldn't imagine being a student right now in this environment. But anyway, first I want to thank Ms. Goding. I support you Tuesday, and I support you tonight, and I feel that you've not deserved the pointed commentary that you've so graciously withstood. I appreciate your position. Thank you again to everybody. I'm a mom of 3 sons, a 2018 graduate, a junior, and a freshman, all Central boys. We could have moved out of the district, but we chose to stay because we do not think doing that's right. We are Central Eagles, and we bleed purple, win or lose. That is our commitment. I listened to the meeting this past Tuesday night in frustrated amazement because of, yes, a lot of pettiness and a lot of sidelining that really isn't necessary. As the lady that said that left just a minute ago, yes, we are OPS. We are the taxpayers. We are the parents. I'm the treasurer of not just a football organization, but of Central's voice, choir, track. We're all very involved, and we all have a lot of skin in the game when it comes to what's happening. We share the city with all the kids in the school district. And no, they didn't stand in solidarity with us like we wish they would have. We're out at restaurants, stores, churches, parks, and a myriad of other places sharing these spaces with members of our neighboring school districts. We share oxygen with an entire metropolitan district, and all of them but us are successfully adapting. Yes, sports are important. I was a band kid and a journalism student. I wasn't an athlete. Regardless, those activities teach discipline, inclusion, teamwork, and cooperation. My 14-year-old and 16-year-old now sit in the room all day in and day out, on a screen. What's going on for them is not good for their mental health. The remote learning is clunky with teams and notebooks. Teachers are having to manage a huge number of students electronically. It's not practical and it is not healthy. It's too much screen time. My second son is an ADHD child and has an IEP. I cannot tell you how much depression and anxiety is setting in, especially for him. On top of that, students using non-iPad technology do not have T-Mobile hotspot access. It has nearly doubled our internet fee. The connection for our other son on the T-Mobile, sure, he gets kicked out 3 or 4 times a week. Football, almighty football. But also choir, cross-country, track, they all conditioned for their sports for 2 months at Central. They followed protocol and they had no incidents. Sports and activities are some of the only thing that these kids have. For so many, those activities make up their entire cosmos. For so many, it's a springboard, be it sports, dance, music, art, journalism, academics, or any other club activity. By keeping them out of the competitiveness with the rest of the state, you're taking their legs out from under them. You're preventing this year's senior class from competing from so many things. Speaking as a football mom, you're taking their ability to make film for recruiters. The virus is not going away. We cannot live in the dark, separated indefinitely. The CDC says this is not going away, and we need to get back to normal routine, and keeping kids at home is not normal. Parents are not teachers, and we should not be expected to be. For the board, this is not a me thing, as I just heard a bit ago from a board member. This is an us thing, and your choices are harming the student body.
Thank you for your speech. If you would like to submit your written commentary to the board, please email it to us or give it to Mr. Ray.
Who's speaking to me?
I'm speaking. Right here. Oh.
Thank you.
Thank you. just email it to the board, and we can read the rest of your speech on there.
Well, I'd like to say I've emailed the board 2 or 3 times with very little to no response. but I'll be happy
I
to
couldn't respond over the last 2 weeks because of other things. Very disrespectful, but I understand. All right, guys, that's what democracy is about. Everyone being able to have their time to speak in front of the Board of Education. We didn't dismiss anybody. We're listening to you. This is a tough decision, not just for us, for the superintendent, her staff, and all of our teachers that are working every single day. And I think this is one thing that we all have to think about. We're all in this together. All Omaha, all Nebraska, and we have to work together to get through this. So I strongly encourage you, before really, ripping someone a new one, to think about it. Think about what they're going through, and then also ask them to think about what you're going through and how we can work together. Because we're not going to get through this button heads. So that's just a little food for thought. The next thing on the agenda is the consent agenda, and I will entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda that's before us.
So move.
There's a motion by Mr. Smith. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Ms. Cracky. Any abstentions? Seeing none, Mr. Ray, roll call, please.
Gadding,
Aye.
Holman,
Aye.
Cracky,
Aye.
Perlman. Ryan,
Aye.
Smith,
Aye.
Snow,
Aye.
Cassidy.
Aye.
8 aye.
Motion carries. Thank you. And we'll actually just take if everyone's okay, would everybody like a 5-minute break? Okay, let's do a 5-minute break and come back at 8:17. Thank you.
We didn't get a break last time, remember? Unless we took it on the other evening.
All right, folks, it's time to get started. This is one of the most exciting board meetings we're going to have this year because it is budget time. In budget time, there's a lot of numbers. And this is also the meeting that Mr. Scott Roberts will lead us the entire meeting. So the first item on the agenda, and actually it's all budget stuff. So first item, I-1A. Mr. Roberts.
Snow, Vice President Holman, Superintendent Logan, members of the board, I'd like to thank you for the opportunity to address you this evening and review our proposed budget for this year. This evening, we are requesting approval of a proposed budget for fiscal year 21. Total budget of $1.1 billion is comprised of the general fund and 11 other funds. I will be focusing my remarks this evening on the 4 primary funds that comprise our levy. That includes the general fund, the bond fund, the special building fund, and the qualified capital purpose undertaking fund. This proposal is the culmination of a process that began last December. In the initial stages, staff developed a high-level budget, identified areas for investment, analyzed specific areas of spending to ensure adequate funding for key initiatives was available. Following that, detailed department and program level budgets were developed in collaboration with leadership throughout the district. It goes without saying, but it takes a skilled and dedicated team to develop a responsible and disciplined budget, which is what we have this year. I would like to thank everyone in the district who participated in the process this year, especially our budget director, Christy Rakowski. Ms. Rakowski led a district-wide process that we believe delivers on the commitment to our students, our community, and our staff. In February, the board approved our new 5-year strategic plan of action. This budget includes initiatives in support of that plan. While I will go through the details shortly, I am happy to report we were able to meet our goals this year with a modest 1% increase in expenses and a slight levy decrease. This presentation includes information you have seen previously through budget updates to the Budget and Audit Committee, as well as the small group budget workshops that were held with board members prior to this meeting. Our budget proposal is focused on investing for the future of our students, our staff, and our district. Proposed funding is provided for key initiatives in our new strategic plan of action, as well as programs focused on student learning and growth. Investments in our students include $3.5 million for an additional session of summer school next summer, $10.8 million for previously approved remote learning internet support for all students in the district, and $2 million for expanded career education programming. Included in this plan are investments for staff. The proposed plan includes increases for both negotiated and non-negotiated staff. It also includes additional staff for classroom instruction and for student support. As was the case last year, we continue to focus on classroom and student-facing technology. We have included $3.3 million in this year's budget for additional and replacement technology. Our technology focus supports our remote learning instructional model and provides tools that enable in-person student instruction and learning as well. We have also included $4.3 million for equipment, materials, and supplies that we will begin acquiring this year for our new schools opening in 2 years. Included in our plan, in our plan for this year is a $2 million investment for 3 additional turnaround schools. As you may recall, the $37 million budget amendment passed in February this year included monies for 3 turnaround schools. In continuing with our plan, we will complete another 3 schools next year. We were able to fund these key initiatives with a combination of revenue sources available and utilizing cash reserves. I will discuss that in more detail later in the presentation, but it's important to note that we were able to deliver the budget needed this year while continuing to maintain cash reserve levels at a prudent level and without a levy increase. Building a responsible and effective budget is about maintaining balance and ensuring proposed spending is in line with revenues. District revenue is derived from 3 broadly defined sources: state and federal receipts, property taxes and other local receipts, and cash reserves. Reserves are sometimes referred to as the district's rainy day fund. Board policy stipulates that the district must maintain cash reserves between 10 and 20%. In February, I stood in front of you seeking approval for a $37 million budget amendment because we finished fiscal year 2019 with a reserve balance in excess of 20%. Under normal circumstances, last year's budget amendment would have brought our reserves under that 20% level by the end of the last fiscal year. Unfortunately, COVID-19 has created anything but a normal circumstance. The unforeseen situation last year created by COVID-19 has once again caused our ending reserve balance to be in excess of 20%. The proposed budget for this year includes use of those excess reserve funds. This plan will enable us to get the reserve below 20% by the end of this fiscal year. Use of the reserves does not increase the proposed levy or the property tax request proposed for this year. As you can see from the pie chart on the left side of the page, approximately 50% of our revenue is from state and federal sources, while 45% is from property tax and local sources, with the remaining 5% being from cash reserves. The proposed budget shows salaries and benefits comprise 77% of our total spending in the general fund. This would be 81% if we excluded use of the one-time project reserve balances this year. Our staff are our most important resource, and nearly 92% of the staff throughout the district are classroom-facing and student-supporting. The remaining expenses in the budget are for district operations and programs, such as buildings and grounds, utilities, contracted services, equipment, supplies, insurance, and other activities. Revenue and expenses must be in balance. Reserves are used from time to time to supplement available revenue sources. As mentioned previously, board policy stipulates if the unassigned reserve balance must be maintained between 10 and 20%. When the reserve is exceeded for 2 consecutive years, the third year's budget must include the one-time spending to bring that reserve balance under 20%. Having a fund balance at the higher end of the policy range provides us financial security and flexibility. It allows us to weather financial uncertainty that may exist with state and local revenue sources that may be caused by unforeseen adverse economic conditions, such as those being caused by COVID-19. Maintaining a strong fund balance is also very important to maintain the district's bond rating, particularly as the district moves forward with Phase 2 bond work and constructing the new schools that are scheduled to open in 2 years. The next 2 slides break down the general fund revenues and expenses in a little more detail. This slide shows the components of revenues for the district and compares the proposed budget for this year to the adopted budget last year as amended in February of this year. Revenue is projected to be $666 million, which is an increase of $8 million or 1.2% over the prior year. There is a projected $13.1 million increase in local property tax revenues. This is due exclusively to a 7% increase in the 2020 certified valuations from Douglas and Sarpy counties. As noted earlier, and to be discussed on a later page, there's a slight decrease in our proposed tax levy this year, so all of this increase can be attributed to a valuation increase. There is also a $7 million decrease in state aid this year. This is part of normal fluctuations we see from year to year and is not a result of any legislative action or change in funding of the TIOSA formula. There are other changes noted in these other categories as well, but these are due to normal fluctuations in spending and there's nothing significant to note. The pie chart on the bottom of the page shows the proportional share of each revenue source to the total revenue within the general fund. These percentages are consistent with last year except for state aid. State aid dropped from 47% to 43% of our total revenue, and this is due to the $7 million decrease in aid that we are scheduled to receive. Similar to the revenue slide on the prior page, this slide shows expense components for this year's proposed budget and comparisons to the adopted budget for last year as amended in February of this year. The proposed general fund budget, expense budget this year is also $666 million, which is an increase of $8 million or 1.2% over last year. As noted previously, policy will mandate that we include the use of cash reserves in our plan this year. Included in this year's budget is $36.7 million of reserves. Of this total, $21.7 million is for one-time non-recurring projects this year, and the other $15 million is to complete the initiatives from last year. Since the state mandates a cash basis budget, it is important for us to include dollars in the plan this year for initiatives we completed last year so that vendors can be paid for products and services provided. From an accrual basis, these projects are substantially complete and were noted as completed for last year. But from a cash basis, not all the funds were dispersed by the end of the fiscal year on these initiatives. Looking at individual expense components, the changes you see are normal and customary as budget initiatives and spending priorities shift from year to year. I'll talk briefly about some of the changes from last year. Salaries and benefits are showing an increase of 3.2%. There are two primary drivers behind this change. First, as is customary, we have planned for salary increases for existing staff. The district has a number of negotiated labor agreements and contractual increases for those employees, as well as increases for non-negotiated staff, are driving most of this increase for this year. Second, our proposed budget includes money for new classroom-facing and student-supporting positions. These positions, some of which support our new strategic plan of action, include reading teachers, reading recovery specialists, literacy coaches, early childhood paraprofessionals, special education teachers, social workers, and others. Contracted and professional services are going up $1.1 million. This is a result of the higher contractual obligations we have with our student transportation provider. The $8.4 million decrease in supplies and materials is due primarily to a $7 million budget item last year for new curriculum adoption that was completed. Earlier this year, we completed that project, and there's no new adoptions planned for this year, so that item does not recur in this year's budget. The remaining decrease is due to lower spending on student technology. With the recent purchase of iPads for every student in the district, less money will be needed for replacement technology next year. The required contribution for the Omaha School Employees Retirement System that's noted in the chart is the additional contribution the district is required to make to the pension plan each year. This contribution is based on an actuarial study as of January of each year. The contribution, or the ARC, is budgeted across multiple funds, and it's recorded where we have pension-eligible employees. The majority of the dollars budgeted are shown here in the general fund, but there are additional budget dollars for the ARC in the Nutrition Services Fund and ESU 19. As you can see on this page, the general fund portion of this budget is $23.1 million this year. Across all funds, we have budgeted $24.1 million. That's an increase of $2.8 million, or 13%, over what was budgeted in the prior year. The pie chart at the bottom of the page shows the proportional share of each expense category to total expenses in the general fund. Percentages are consistent with last year, except for supplies and materials, which dropped from 6% to 4% due to the non-recurrence of the curriculum adoption a year ago. Page 6 shows the property tax request for each of the leviable funds for this year. And once again, this includes the general fund, bond fund, special building fund, and the qualified capital purpose undertaking fund. The first two columns show the tax request and the tax rates for last year's approved plan. Last year, the district's property tax request was $296.1 million, or a rate of $1.24.6654. The last two columns show the request and the proposed rate for this year. The property tax request for this year is $315.5 million, or a rate of $1.24.0809. This is a decrease of 0.5845 cents from last year, or a little over half a cent. There are four components of the property tax request. The general fund tax rate is $1.02, or to be exact, 1.026396. This is comprised of the general fund rate of $1.22.196, plus the levy exclusion for voluntary termination agreements prior to 2017-18, of an additional 0.0042. The bond fund tax rate is 0.173244. This is for interest and principal payment obligations for the next year on our existing bonds. The rate went up slightly due to two items. First, we had a $125 million second tranche draw on the existing bonds earlier this year. And then this summer, there was significant savings from a 2010 bond refinance that we did. And the savings substantially lessened the impact of the interest that we would have paid on the second tranche. The special building fund tax rate of 0.027804, the special building fund is used principally for improvements and renovation work on existing buildings. The district has not levied for that fund for several years until last year. This year's levy is a continuation of the process to replenish balances in that fund. The combined tax rate for the general fund and special building funds are subject to a statutory limit of $1.05. This $1.05 limit remains unchanged from a year ago. The general fund levy, excluding the voluntary termination levy exclusion, plus the special building fund levy, is at the statutory limit of $1.05. The district has had a combined general fund special building fund levy at this limit for several years. The qualified capital purpose undertaking fund rate is 0.013365. This is for bonds the district has issued in the past, primarily related to health and safety modifications, such as fire alarm replacements and environmental remediation. This levy represents principal and interest obligations due over the next year on those bonds. Page 7 shows the proposed revenue and expense budget for all leviable funds. The proposed revenue and expenses are expected to be $889.7 million, or to be exact, $889,735,463. This page does not include the $117 million of expected grants activities this year. The revenue sources are noted in the pie chart on the left side of the page. As you can see, the property tax revenues and state aid account for a majority of the district's revenue. Other local receipts include items such as motor vehicle taxes, interest on investments, and court fees and fines. Other state receipts are principally reimbursements for special education costs. The total proposed expenses are noted in the pie chart on the right side of the page and equal our expected revenue of $889.7 million. The general fund accounts for $666 million of this total. We have discussed those activities already, so I will not go into them any further here. The remaining expenses include $83.8 million for principal and interest payments in the bond fund, $134.4 million in the special building fund. This represents bond proceeds on existing projects that will be expended in the next year, as well as the $7 million we are levying for this year in order to rebuild that fund, and $5.5 million for principal and interest payments in the qualified capital purpose undertaking fund. Page 8 provides some additional visibility to the levy funds and breaks out the proposed levy into its components. We discussed the levy in detail on page 6, so I'm not sure there's anything more to discuss here. The purpose of the slide is to show that only a portion of our revenue comes from property taxes and to provide granularity and breakdown to the levy by fund. Moving to page 9. Earlier today, we concluded the public budget hearing, and at this meeting, we will be seeking budget adoption. September 18th is the budget filing deadline with Douglas and Sarpy counties, as well as the Nebraska Department of Education and the Auditor of Public Accounts. By October 13th, the resolution setting the property tax request must be filed with Douglas and Sarpy counties. For additional information on our proposed budget this year, we have prepared a budget at a glance document. This document is similar to what we have prepared in the past and provides additional insight and information in this year's plans and priorities. We have hard copies available tonight at the back of the room and have also posted it on the district's website at openbook.ops.org. In addition to that, we have posted our detailed budgets for all departments and programs, and that has been made available on the website as well, once again, at openbook.ops.org. This evening, we are also seeking approval of the budget for the Educational Service Unit number 19. The ESU provides professional development for staff, technology, technology support, and printing and publication services across the district. Projected revenue this year is $19.25 million. There is no change in our revenue over last year. Property tax receipts are up slightly, and this is due once again to the 7% valuation increase from Douglas and Sarpy counties that I talked about earlier. Changes in local receipts are due primarily to a change in the interlocal transfers from the district. State aid for court services is down slightly. In total, revenues are not expected to change from what was included in our plan a year ago. For ESU expenses, this page provides some additional details around the expenses for the ESU this year. As was the case with revenue, expenses will remain flat at $19.25 million. As covered in the general fund discussion, the change in salaries and benefits is due to salary increases for existing staff. The primary driver of the reduction in contracted and professional services is related to multi-year PeopleSoft upgrade that was substantially completed in fiscal year 2019. While a majority of the costs were incurred in that year, some of the work continued into the last fiscal year on this upgrade. That project is now complete and no additional dollars are needed in this year's budget. Supply and material costs have increased over the last year due primarily to an increase in printing and publication activities needed to support the remote learning instructional model that we implemented as a result of COVID-19. Page 12 shows the proposed tax rate for ESU 19. Nebraska provides a separate statutory rate for educational service units of up to 1.5 cents. As a reminder, there's no increase in our expense budget in ESU 19 this year. Due to the proposed budget holding expenses flat with last year, the proposed tax rate will remain unchanged from a year ago at 1.5 cents. As a final item this evening, I'd like to share with you our updated 5-year financial projection for the general fund. This is something we present in conjunction with our budget every year. As a district, it's important that we always plan for the future and have visibility to what may happen and the financial challenges that may exist. The better the visibility, the better positioned we will be to plan and weather those changes. The finance team frequently updates its modeling. As updates are prepared, we will challenge and update assumptions used and modify our outlook for expected changes in economic conditions and legislative action. Having an eye to the future better positions us to avoid challenges in both the short and long term, allowing us to better utilize resources, anticipate issues, and resolve challenges over a longer period of time. Let's now take a look at the numbers. None of the numbers on this page will be perfectly accurate over the next 5 years. However, the modeling behind these numbers shows trends and directional changes that we are expecting over time. Long-term forecasting enables the district to plan for the future based on these modeled changes to future revenues and expenses. The first 2 columns of numbers represent the approved budget last year and our most recent forecast for the same period. With our fiscal year ending on August 31st, we do not yet have final numbers for last year. The final numbers and the audit performed by Syme Johnson will be available in November. The third column of numbers is the proposed budget presented to you this evening. For purposes of the unassigned fund balance projections at the bottom, the full $37 million for the last year's cash reserve projects are accounted in the 2019-20 budget and reforecast columns. Instead of focusing on the individual revenue and expense components, I think it's more valuable to focus on the projected unassigned fund balance at the bottom of the page. As you can see, the beginning fund balance for this budget year is projected to be 23.3%. The forecast shows the balance continues to decline over the years included in this projection. Many things could happen to change this result and provide a more favorable outlook in future years. Revenues could be greater than expected, expenses could be less than projected, and timing and composition of expenses could change. What this projection tells us is that we need to continue our work within the district, pursuing process improvement and implementing operational efficiencies. We will continue to follow a process of continual process improvement and work to identify ways to more effectively utilize our available resources. This forecast is not a once-a-year project. We continue to reforecast our business and are always looking toward the future. The earlier we identify issues, the longer the period of time we have to solve the problems. Planning for the future ensures that we have the necessary resources available to serve our students, our community, and our staff. This concludes my presentation this evening. I'd like to thank you for the opportunity to review our proposed budget with you. Before moving on to questions that you may have, I would like to introduce two of my senior staff members who are with me this evening, Christy Rykowski, my budget director, and Shane Ryan, my controller. Without their leadership and the tireless efforts by them and their team, we would not be where we are tonight. With that said, I'd be happy to take any questions you may have.
Thank you, Mr. Roberts. And before we open it up to the board, if you can go to slide 14 for me. I just want not just board members, but the community to see that ARC payment and how it increases, and letting everyone know that we are still paying that ARC payment. And next year, we're really going to have to work not just with our legislature, but with our teachers and community to try to come up with a resolution, because that's money we could actually be spending in the classroom for resources that we may need. So I will open it up to my colleagues if you have any questions or anything, as well as the chair of the Budget Committee. Mrs. Goding.
First of all, I want to say thank you. Mr. Roberts, you've done a great job putting these slides together. It's a great deck, and it's very easy to follow, and I think we all have talked about that as we've been in different small group meetings over the last week, that we really are very appreciative of all of that work. I also recognize that there's two people on your staff that help a lot with that, so since this is my last budget meeting, I especially want to thank Christy. I think we've been together for the last 7 years working on things related to finance, and so I just really want to thank you. You've always been extremely professional and very thorough in answering questions, so I want to thank you very much. And Shane, you've been around for about a year now, and so thank you for coming on board and working so diligently on this as well. So that for sure, first and foremost, is on my mind. I think when we look at this, and so what I want to transition to is kind of my sense of where I'm at, and probably everybody knows that, because the biggest thing for me has been this pension issue and where we stand, and knowing that in some of the previous analysis that we've done, you know, putting about 30 million in a year was kind of where we knew that that would maybe help us get out of some of this difficulty. We know that the investments are down in Lincoln now, but when I was looking at the financial statement, which is actually on the agenda this time under the treasurer's report, one of the concerns that I have is that we're $50 million right now through May, down over where we were the previous year. So that means we're not growing. Now, granted, June and July and August had pretty good returns in the stock market. We also know, though, that not everything is invested there. We still have about 300 and maybe 80-ish million of investments in those alternatives, and those alternatives happen to be commercial real estate in what they call the Smile, which is up the coast and down through Texas. So if you think about the United States and a Smile, a number of that commercial real estate is in the Smile, which we know right now is kind of challenged. So I would like to see us put more money in to the pension, just so that we can send a strong statement to our current staff and our retirees that we're solid on this. I think it would maybe even help with the recruiting from an HR standpoint. The other thing that I asked, I think it was Shane to put together, and you put it together wonderfully for me, which is kind of what's the amount between what our retirees are paying in and what's being taken out. And if we look at the financial statements that are on tonight's report, we also see a significant shift in that. So I'll just reflect back to 7 years ago when I started on this board. What we put in as teachers, the district, without the ARC, taking the ARC out of it, was more than what was going out, inflow out. And that was just 7 years ago. And when you look at it today, if you don't take the ARC into consideration, we're 66 million shorter on what we put in versus what's flowing out. And so from my perspective, I know I voted no last year on the budget, the general side. I will be doing that again simply because I think we need to put more money into the pension. I think it would help us secure that recruitment of new teachers, knowing that our system is more on firm ground. I think we're working toward that end, and we'll have another discussion in a little bit on the legislative side of that. But those are two sets of numbers related to the pension that make me nervous about where we're at. And I realize that there's a lot at play, and we're always at the whim of the market, but that is one of my concerns. The other item that I wanted to bring up is on the levy, and I know that and I'm trying to get back to the slide where the levy is. What is that slide? 6. So what we're showing $1.24 as the levy value, or as the levy for our taxpayers. And I realize that part of that is the bond funds, and I think it was Dr. Sturba on Tuesday that talked about how our community has so graciously done these two bond events, and I know Mrs. Miller spoke tonight to the $800 million. And so that's a huge part of what we pay in. And it really struck me when Dr. Sturba said that, because I really started thinking about, because of all of that bond work, we are more efficient in our buildings, our systems are more efficient, things are newer, and we don't necessarily have to spend as much money out of our general fund to take care of those things. So our community has shifted a little bit in paying for a lot of construction work and doing a lot of renovation and new work. And when I look at the general fund levy, and I think about a year ago, we were in 42 million of excess reserves over what we state we should have. And this year, we're probably gonna end up 20-ish million. What that tells me is if we're ending up with that excess over what we've spent, is our levy's a bit too high. And so I think about busing. And when I looked at the financial statements tonight, through July, we'd already had a $4 million reduction in busing this past fiscal year over the year before. And we know that there may be $1 million payment out yet to come, but that's $3 million, that's a penny. And when I think about already we've operated for quite a few days of school so far but even in this fiscal year, we're at about 10 days without any busing. And when our busing runs, what did you tell me, $2 million a month?
It runs between $1.8 million and $2 million.
And $2 million a month. So if we think about that, a penny of our levy is about $2.5 million, is that right? Yep. So I guess from my perspective, and of course I look at my neighboring districts, and when I see Millard voted $1.22 the other night, I think, wow, okay, so we're higher than them. At this particular point, we're not in school, and we also have had significant cash excess for the last 2 years. I would like to see us bring down the levy. I know that we would need to do that by the 18th, is that right, of September, in order to be able to do that. But I think for our community that right now is hurting in a lot of ways, for people who've lost jobs. When I'm at a restaurant, I'm wanting to tip big, and I feel terrible when I only see a few tables of people there, and talk to the waitresses and talk to the different folks. And like Ms. Ryan said, everybody who rents is paying property tax through their rent. So if there would be even a way for us to bring our levy down 1 or 2 cents on that general side, that's just my opinion. So I will vote no on this levy, just because I really feel for our community and where they're at right now, and knowing that we've had excess cash in the last 2 years, and we know we're very short on staff. We certainly hope we get the staff hired, but recognizing that we're down, about 140 certificated teachers, I think, based on Tuesday night. That's in the budget, but not cash that's going out. I'm certainly hopeful we get those special ed teachers hired. I'm certainly hopeful that our students show up in attendance, because that's going to be critical to that state aid number, we know, on that attendance day. So anyway, that's, I think that's my perspective on that. The only other item I would bring to that is, I know a number of students paid for their activity cards, and we talked about this the other night, Ms. Cassidy and I both did, and we're not having activities. I recognize we're refunding those, but I guess I would ask the board to sincerely think about prorating, once we come back to activities, prorating the kids' cards so that if they've missed out on activities for, say, 2 months or so, that part of that fee isn't included there. I know it's not a lot, but if you have 3 kids in the district and you're paying $45 a piece, that, you know, that kind of adds up. You could have a pizza out that night or something like that. That's always kind of the way I think about those things, is how does that impact just my day-to-day living. So those are some thoughts that I just have related to the budget.
So could I just make a comment, please? The comment you had made about the excess from last year and the levy being too high, I don't think represents kind of the year we just had. Under normal circumstances, our budget would have been sufficient to obviously cover all of our costs. And I hate to blame COVID-19, but because of COVID-19, we shifted to a remote learning model at a dime in March. So there were significant savings that were unplanned for transportation, as you mentioned, utility savings within the buildings that were closed. We had non-permanent staff that no longer were paid, part-time casual labor, if you will. And those savings added up, so the $20.3 million that we're forecasting of excess for last year, we can point directly to the events that happened around COVID. So I would disagree slightly that we were charging too much of a levy. If COVID hadn't happened, we likely would not be over the 20% right now, because we had a sufficient budget to operate the district.
So I completely agree with you that the events of the world changed us on that. However, I think about the levy for that person who owns that house today and what they're getting for today. And so because we had savings, I see it as it's an impact to all of us that are paying property taxes, that, hey, yes, there was savings here. Let's let that flow back to the taxpayer. It was, you know, wouldn't have happened had it not been for COVID. But because COVID did happen, and we know families are struggling today, why not allow that savings to flow back in? That's, and I recognize that it wouldn't have happened had it not been for COVID, but it did happen, and so that's where it's just where I'm at from what I'm hearing from my constituents. So I'm just sharing that.
Thank you, Mrs. Goding. Any other comments, questions from members of the board? Mr. Perlman.
I would just tend to agree with a lot of the comments Ms. Goding made. I advocated for at least not increasing the levy last year, given the historic rise in property valuations. If property values are up 7% and the levy doesn't change, then everyone just got a 7% tax increase. And so I don't think I really have much more to add than to that. And I also agree that I think there should be more dedicated to the ARC payments. I've never thought that the rosy projections on expected rate of return has ever been realistic, especially now that, you know, with the pandemic and the unemployment rate and all the other economic indicators, the rate of return is not even anywhere near the realm of realistic. And so I just prefer that be addressed in a more realistic fashion. And I know that's not the job of folks putting together the budget. There's certain rates of return that are standard, but what is it now, 6.5%, 7.5% for rate of return assumed on these things?
Yeah, it's certainly lower than what it needs to be to make that plan whole.
Okay. That's all I have.
One thing I would just like to point out as well on the ARC, because it's come up, nobody would argue that it wouldn't be great to put a lot more money in there. One thing I will point out, though, is that the actuarial reports that have come back for the last 2 years have required an ARC below what we budgeted, and we paid the full budgeted amount. So over the last 2 years, we have overpaid on that minimum commitment by approximately $5 million. And I just think it's certainly not enough. I wish we could do more, but we are doing everything that we can within the budget cycle each year to make that plan as healthy as possible.
I agree that we have paid in more, but what happened 2 years ago was there was a shift from a closed 30-year where, and I always go back to Senator Nordstrom, who was, fabulous at leading the retirement system for the state of Nebraska. And he and I think it was Senator Mello worked together to ensure that the other systems would have closed, and we as well would be able to get to full funding by 30 years. We're no longer at a closed. The change in the actuarial assumption is a rolling always 30 years out. And so that definitely increases your unfunded liability, and it does decrease your payment. But it's different sets of assumptions than what Senator Nordstrom had really worked towards, and Senator Mello. So I think that makes it a little bit different for me, because I was more looking at that closed, let's get it taken care of just like the rest of the state. And granted, while they don't do their ARC based on closed, they're within that range, and they're closing in on the gap of having theirs paid in a shorter period of time than even that 30 years. So that's my only issue on that point.
Well said, Mrs. Goding. Mr. Perlman, did you have another thing?
Yeah, just briefly. What is there? I guess I'm trying to wrap my head around the CARES Act funding that the district received and where that's all reflected.
And where
that is shown in the.
It is part of the $117 million grants activity. Yes. So like the title funds and the CARES fund and any private foundation receipts that we get would be part of the grants fund.
Is that in this PowerPoint here?
It's footnoted on one of the pages, yes.
Okay, and that's a one-time for next fiscal year?
Yeah, unless there's another round that comes out of DC, the 23 million we received and then shared with the non-public districts is in the 117 million for this year.
Okay, actually, I'm glad you brought that up, because that was kind of an interesting topic, is whether or not it had to be shared with private schools. How'd that ever turn out?
Okay, so there's new intel, of course. There was a court ruling recently, I don't know if it was this week or late last week, where they indicated Secretary DeVos exceeded her authority in indicating that those monies had to be shared proportionally to total students as opposed to title students. So as of today, we heard that the Nebraska Department of Education had a 4 o'clock meeting this afternoon to figure out what to do next. Because the difference for our district is fairly significant. Under total student allocations to the non-publics within our area, we would have to share 3.6 million of that 23.2 or 3 million we received. Under a title allocation, we'd only have to share $1 million. So it's about a $2.6 million difference. The state now needs to figure out what their position's going to be, and they've promised guidance within the next 2 to 3 weeks to let us know how we should be adjusting. So what we have done at this point is we will be communicating with the non-publics. We're going to share both calculations, both numbers with them. We will allow them to spend up to the lower number based on title. And then if it's determined we can share more, we will release the additional funds.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Oh, absolutely. But
Okay.
so the specific spending that OPS intends with all the 23 million is to be determined? Is that?
We've already committed it. So the iPads that we purchased last year and the T-Mobile internet connectivity, pretty much took care of the monies that we're going to have available.
Okay, thanks.
Mhm.
Mrs. Godding.
So I have a question on that. So of the 23 million, how much did you put into the budget? Was it the 19 or was it
The whole
22?
the whole 23, I believe,
The whole
has to go in there.
23, and then we show as expense out?
Yes,
The
because
3
we're
million?
actually the receiver of those funds.
Yep.
And we have to manage the non-publics from that, so technically, we're the ones getting $23 million.
So right now in the expense side, we're showing a payout of 3.5
Yeah,
million?
3.6 or whatever.
And it could just be 1 million?
correct.
So it could end up that we end up with 2.5 million, 2.6 million,
we'll-
more than what we thought if the state comes back?
Yep, we'll have to see how it all
Yeah.
shakes out.
Okay, and that's worth a penny too.
Thank you. All righty. Thank you, Mr. Roberts. Thank you for your team and for the presentation and presenting this.
Thank you for your time.
Dr. Holman.
Thank you, Mr. Roberts.
I move to adopt the resolution before you to approve the 2020-2021 non-levy budgets for Douglas County School District 0001, which includes the following: school lunch, $39,072,781; school activities, $6,500,000; central stores, $4 million; depreciation, $8 million; employee benefit, $12,600,000; student fees, $900,000; contingency, $18,500,000; cooperative, $36,705,654; prior service retirement, $75,000.
Thank you. There's a motion to approve the recommendation by Dr. Holman, that just read by Dr. Holman. I will entertain a second.
Second.
Second by Mrs. Cracky. Any discussion? Hearing none. Mr. Ray, roll call, please.
Holman,
Aye.
Cracky,
Aye.
Perlman,
Aye.
Ryan,
Aye.
Smith,
Aye.
Snow,
Aye.
Cassidy,
Aye.
Godding.
Aye.
8 ayes.
Motion carries. Moving on to item I1B. Dr. Holman.
I move to adopt the resolution before you to approve the 2020-2021 Douglas County School District 0001 budgets, which require a tax levy, excluding the general fund as follows: bond fund, $83,817,025; special building fund, $134,395,500; qualified capital purpose undertaking fund, $5,522,938.
There's a motion by Dr. Holman to approve the recommendation that is before us on item I1B. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Ms. Ryan. Discussion? Hearing none. Mr. Ray, roll call, please.
Cracky,
Aye.
Perlman,
Aye.
Ryan,
Aye.
Smith,
Aye.
Snow,
Aye.
Cassidy,
Aye.
Godding,
Aye.
Holman.
Aye.
8 ayes.
Motion carries. Moving on to item I1C.
I move to adopt the resolution before you to approve the 2020-2021 General Fund Local Operating Fund Budget in the amount of $666 million, supported by tax requirements of $261,021,815, plus reimbursable programs in the amount of $117 million, for a total general fund budget of $783 million.
There's a motion by Dr. Holman to approve the recommendation before us on item I1C. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Ms. Ryan. Any discussion? Mr. Ray, roll call, please. Mr. Perlman, sorry.
Just briefly, I just want to, I am going to be voting no for similar reasons to Ms. Godding. I think the only thing I could add, since I joined the board, the budget is up 15%. Over the past 9 years, it's up almost 50%. I am definitely not one to subscribe to what some folks say that school districts are wasteful with their money, but I do think that when we are in unprecedented times in terms of property valuations skyrocketing like has never happened in the history of our country, combined with the economic crisis that's in front of us right now, I do think that this is, if there's any year to think extra hard about the levy we're imposing on taxpayers, this is the year. And, you know, there's nonstop talk about property taxes in Nebraska. It's been like that my whole life. And it's school boards that play the biggest role in that. And I just think that that's something that we can do when we're looking at $60 million in extra money in just 2 years. So that's why I'll be voting no.
Thank you, Mr. Perlman. Mrs. Gotti.
I echo those comments as well as noting that our families are also paying the bond levy on those increased valuations as well for the buildings. So I think this would be the year, if there was going to be a year, that we could make some adjustments.
Thank you. Mr. Ray, roll call, please.
Perlman.
No.
Ryan.
Aye.
Smith.
Aye.
Snow.
Aye.
Cassidy.
Aye.
Gadding.
No.
Holman.
Aye.
Cracky.
Aye.
6 aye.
Motion carries. Moving on to item I1D.
I move to adopt the resolution before you to approve the 2020-2021 ESU number 19 budget of $19,250,000.
There's a motion by Dr. Holman to approve the recommendation in item I1D. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Ms. Ryan. Any discussion? Mr. Perlman.
I just have a question. What was the budget for this year's? Do we have the number on that?
Wasn't it 22 million or something close to that? Sorry.
We're talking about the ESU.
Yes.
It's flat. $19,250,000 last year for
Okay.
both revenue and expenses.
All
No
right,
change.
Thank you.
Thank you. Roll call, please.
Ryan.
Aye.
Smith.
Aye.
Snow.
Aye.
Cassidy.
Aye.
Gadding.
Aye.
Holman.
Aye.
Cracky.
Aye.
Perlman.
Aye.
8
Okay.
aye.
Motion carries. Thank you. Moving on to item I1E.
I move to adopt the resolution before you to set the 2020-2021 Douglas County School District 0001 property tax requests as follows. General Fund, $261,021,815. Special Building Fund, $7,070,707. Qualified Capital Purpose Undertaking Fund, $3,398,820. Bond Fund, $44,057,601.
There's a motion on the floor to approve the recommendation on item I1E by Dr. Holman. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Ms. Ryan. Any discussion? Mr. Ray, roll call, please.
Smith.
Aye.
Snow.
Aye.
Cassidy.
Aye.
Gadding.
No.
Holman.
Aye.
Cracky.
Aye.
Perlman.
No.
Ryan.
Aye.
6 aye.
Motion carries. Moving on to item I1F.
I move to adopt the resolution before you to set the 2020-2021 ESU number 19 property tax request at $3,814,636.68.
There's a motion to approve, there's a motion by Dr. Holman to approve the recommendation on item I1F. Is Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Smith. Any discussion? Hearing none. Mr. Ray, roll call, please.
Snow.
Aye.
Cassidy.
Aye.
Goding.
Aye.
Holman.
Aye.
Cracky.
Aye.
Perlman.
Aye.
Ryan.
Aye.
Smith.
Aye.
8 aye.
Motion carries. Thank you so much, Board, for approving our budgets for 2020-2021 school year for Omaha Public Schools. Also, just to remind people, our budget is one of the largest in the state, even compared to Douglas County as well as the city of Omaha. Moving on to item I1G, legislative update. And we have Blair from our lobbyist who's here to present to us some interesting findings and some exciting work going on in Lincoln. The floor is yours.
President Snow, Vice President Holman, Dr. Logan, and members of the Board of Education, it's nice to see you all and be with you tonight. So initially, we were going to do an end of the legislative session review. I think you guys have heard enough about the 2020 legislative session that would never end. So I did prepare a PowerPoint. If you would like to review that, Mr. Ray has that for you. So for the sake of time tonight, I'm not going to go through all that with you all. But if you do have any questions about how the session ended, please feel free to reach out to me. If you don't have my contact information, Mr. Ray or Ms. Niels-Brash can assist you with getting in touch with me. And I also want to say a big thanks to our legislative committee and commend you all on getting through the entire 2020 session. It lasted a whole lot longer than you were anticipating, so thank you so much for all of your time and efforts working our way through the session. But, of course, the legislative committee's work is not done. Tonight, what I want to discuss with you all is an issue regarding the Omaha School Employees Retirement System. So, back in 2019, OPS worked on LB 31 with Senator Mark Coulterman. We, OPS, Board of Education, supported that bill, which commissioned a study conducted by the Public Employees Retirement Board in consultation with the Nebraska Retirement Systems Committee, OSERS, OPS, and other stakeholders to prepare a work plan that identifies the tasks, process, costs, and timeline involved in transferring the management of the OSERS plan to the PERB. The study was paid for by the school district, and it was completed in June. The report on the findings of the study was published on June 30th, 2020, and at the August 4th, 2020 board meeting, the board heard the presentation from Ms. Linda Richards, who is chairing our Better Together Coalition, about the study findings and at the about the study findings in the report. So, just a reminder of what is in that report. I'll be quick here. There is a 23-month time frame to initially integrate OSERS into NPERS. The timeline established includes a project kickoff of October 2021 with a start with a go live with the transition of management in September of 2023. The support for integration will continue through August 2023. The cost estimates for IT and the system's implementation and ongoing support for the year following the transition is $4.2 million. OSERS would remain a separate and distinct retirement system. It's not merged with NPERS plans. And OPS remains responsible for the unfunded liability of OSERS. Where possible, the administration of OSERS by NPERS will be conformed with follow the administrative functions and systems for the other retirement plans NPERS administrates. Administrative functions for OSERS would be performed by NPERS in Lincoln. So that's a quick overview of what the report contained. Senator Coulterman, at the end of this legislative session, introduced Legislative Resolution 318, which is an interim study in the Retirement Systems Committee to review the findings of the report. The hearing on LR 318 will be held next Friday, September 18th. The Legislative Committee has been reviewing the report. The district and the board need to be very definitive going into the hearing next week. that they are supportive of the findings of the report. The Board of Education needs to be clear that now that we have the findings from the study, OPS is ready to move forward with the next steps to get OSER's plan healthy and through the eventual transfer of management to the PERB. The Legislative Committee voted to approve an updated version of the Better Together Coalition position statement on the matrix. On page 29 of your matrix, you'll find the current position statement that the board approved on February 3rd, 2020. On page 30, you'll find the updated statement that the Legislative Committee